Alright, hello everyone and welcome back to another video. And this video is going to be on a band I've been a fan of for a long time called Angels and Airwaves. Now this band, in case some of you aren't aware, though I'm sure many of you that are into bands like Blink-182 are familiar with, but Angels and Airwaves was a band that formed actually after Blink-182 had broken up in 2004. Then Tom DeLonge went to form this band, and Mark Hoppus went to form the band called Plus 44, which was a very short-lived band, and I always thought it was like a side project, much like Boxcar Racer was, but it apparently wasn't. It was actually meant to be more of a big thing, like multiple albums and stuff like that, but they just disbanded because they wanted to form Blink again, because Tom DeLonge wanted to come back to Blink and all that. In between that, Angels and Airwaves was the thing, and so far they've released 5 studio albums, and they haven't necessarily put out a bad record, I'd say, yet for sure. And I definitely do enjoy pretty much almost all their material, to be honest. There are some songs I prefer over others from this band, but there isn't really much material I'd say I'd really dislike from this band, actually. I do think this is a very unique band, and it's hard to really find many other things that sound like this band, which makes it unique for sure. And today I'm going to be reviewing all the albums that they've released so far, and please keep in mind I'm releasing this before their new album Lifeforms will come out in September of this year, so I'm not including that because I haven't heard it yet, so I can't really review it, of course, at least yet. But I'm going to be doing all the albums that they've released so far. For number 4, actually, and I include both Love Parts 1 and 2 because they're very similar for sure. And, you know, I decided to group these two together because I pretty much like them just as equally. I don't consider really one much better than the other. But regardless, I'm including this because I think there is a little bit better material that they've released, more meaningful material and more melodic material that they've released on some of their albums other than this. But this album wasn't necessarily bad by any means, and just because I'm ranking it as my least favorite albums by them doesn't necessarily mean I dislike them. I just think they had a little bit of filler material in this that they could have maybe put in some other place, but besides that I don't really have any complaints about this album. And this album actually does still have great guitar tones in it, and songs like Flight of Apollo and the great closing song All That We Are in part 2 of this record. And even songs like Hallucinations are pretty easy to vibe to. You know, the singles on these couple records actually are pretty good. There were a couple of singles on some of the other albums I'll mention here that aren't necessarily as good, but the singles on this album were actually pretty decent. Even Hallucinations wasn't too bad of a single, you know. And this album is definitely very uplifting, and even the title can kind of give that away for sure, but the music definitely does even more, and still definitely proves that. Though the other albums that I'm going to mention in here are a little bit better, just a little bit better. Not like totally better, but I'd say they're at least a little bit better than this. And this was still a good album, but not my favorite by them. But that doesn't necessarily mean I dislike it, because I still listen to it quite often. So this album is great, though not the best from this band. And next one I'm going to mention is the Dreamwalker. Now this album has actually a great use of synth, and I know some people may disagree with that. And consider it the worst album they've released because of the use of synth instead of guitars as much, but the use of synth actually in this album was actually put together pretty well compared to a lot of other bands I've heard use synth, especially in the 80s even, you know, with some of those bands. And this song still has some very melodic material though, like Anomaly and Teenagers and Rituals and Tunnels. And Teenagers and Rituals is probably my favorite song on this album because it definitely spoke to me a lot as a kid, lyrically and everything, and has a great instrumentation to it. And those things alone make it my favorite song in the album for sure, though there are many great songs in this album, honestly. Tunnels is a great song, like I said. Anomaly is great. The Disease is a good song. There's just many great songs in this album, and it doesn't necessarily go too long either at all, even for the length of the songs, though this album didn't have the longest songs by Angels and Airwaves, though some of them were kinda long. We Don't Need to Whisper actually has some of the longest songs they have, but of course that album is going to rank higher on this list than the Dreamwalker because I haven't mentioned it yet. But there still are some uplifting songs that are good in this album too, like The Wolfpack and Paralyze. And there's, again, slight filler in here, just slight, but not enough to necessarily make me dislike this album by any means. I actually really enjoyed this album. And Anomaly, they couldn't have picked a better closing song for this album than Anomaly for sure. You know, it has some great ambience to it. It's a great slow acoustic song. I think it's definitely better than Blink-182's Home is Such a Lonely Place. I mean, it's an alright song by them, but I definitely prefer Anomaly over that song for many reasons. And a lot of concept albums a lot of the time aren't that great, but with Angels and Airwaves, with a couple of concept albums they've released, Love and The Dreamwalker, they're actually really great. I haven't seen the movie for this yet, though I plan on getting it for sure, though I'm reviewing mainly the album here because that's what this video is supposed to be, me reviewing the albums and the music quality of them. And number 2 is I, Empire, and this album was a really great album for sure and had many meaningful songs on it. Of course, you know, Everything's Magic is the only reason why this isn't number 1. Every other song in this album is, in my opinion, almost like a 5 out of 5. Everything's Magic is more of like a 3.5. It's one of those songs that's like not necessarily the greatest song. It's not bad, but it's not the greatest song on this album. And, you know, for a first single, it could have been a little better, you know, it had more of a hook to it. But regardless, you know, it's still a pretty decent song, and I still listen to it from time to time, though not, you know, as much as I used to. But there's a lot of great songs on this album, like Call to Arms, Secret Crowds, and the song Rite of Spring, which is honestly one of my favorite Angels and Airwaves songs of all time for sure, because it's Tom DeLonge basically explaining what brought him up into being in Blink-182 and everything back in the day, and just, you know, living a good life of just goofing around and doing what you want basically. And the emotion that's put into it is what makes it so special, you know, and that's what makes it such a great song to listen to when you want inspiration for sure, and if you want to make something great for sure, you know. And songs like A Call to Arms add a great mix of synth and guitars in it. I think they blend together probably better in this album than almost any other album that they've released for sure. And Secret Crowds is also another really great uplifting song on this album, and it's also another one of my favorite Angels and Airwaves songs of all time because of the crunching guitars it has in it that remind me of Boxcar Racer, and has some of the greatest riffs out of any album Angels and Airwaves has released, or any song Angels and Airwaves has released. They couldn't have picked a better closer too for this album than the song Heaven, and it's also another great closer along with the closer for Love Part 2, and I think those two are definitely probably the best closers that they've released on any album because of the instrumentation on it for sure. You know, you just can't beat these for Angels and Airwaves closers, at least from what I've seen so far. Again, Life Forms is going to release here in September, and I don't know how that will go as of the closing song, though, you know, they've released a couple songs already for it, and I think they're pretty good, though not the greatest for sure, but I still think they're pretty good. But anyways, we're talking about I, Empire, and all around together, this album was definitely put together well, and definitely gives me inspiration to write music or do something creative for sure, because of, you know, the topics that were put into this album about, you know, creativity and inspiration and all that. And I think this album is a great album to listen to for people that want a bit of serotonin and a bit of creativity to spark into their head or something like that. So yeah, now we're gonna go to number 1, which is We Don't Need to Whisper. Now, pretty much everything about this album is absolutely solid to me, in my opinion. Even the song Distraction is pretty much all around solid. It's not my favorite song in the album, you know, but it definitely is still a solid song because of every song in this album has just great ambience to it, you know, the best out of any Angels and Airwaves album in my opinion. And I feel like Tom DeLonge had some of these instrumentals in the album in his head for a long time and just never knew how to use them exactly. But they actually turned out really great in my opinion. I think part of that is probably why is because he spent a long time actually coming up with them and everything and stitching them together. And overall, they turned out absolutely excellent, you know. And the song has some great songs to get you through rough times or, you know, frustrations and stuff like that for sure. The song called The Adventure really takes you away to like another planet or something for sure, where, you know, things are not as f***ed up as they are on planet Earth for sure, you know, and things grow better for sure and everything. There were songs that were more emotional on this album, like The Little Is Enough and It Hurts, which had the perfect touch to them. These songs had a great emotion in them, had great instrumentation, and melodies that, man, they really hit you somehow, you know. They really hit you hard, along with some older, more emotional Blink songs, like Stay Together for the Kids or Adam's song. These songs are almost just as good as those, to be honest, and, you know, overall, Tom DeLonge just proves that he's good at both writing songs that are more uplifting and give you hope, and songs that can definitely help you through some rough times, for sure, like these two songs here. And It Hurts actually was released as a single in the UK at first. I'm not sure why, because, you know, it was 2006 and I'm pretty sure, you know, the internet was becoming a bigger thing at the time, and I'm not sure why they released it as a single just in the UK, but regardless, you know, this song is an absolutely great song, you know, and is of course about, you know, someone who lies to you and everything when you believe so heavily that, you know, they're a trustworthy person and everything, and all of a sudden, you know, they betray you and you find out and your head's just all clouded with all sorts of dark and everything. It isn't too dramatic. It's actually, you know, very relatable for sure, and it's not like totally dramatic like some other, you know, songs by some emo bands are. It's not like that for sure. It definitely adds the perfect touch to your emotions of what you may be feeling when someone betrays you for sure and everything. So, and the guitars in this album for sure are definitely my favorite out of any album they've released, with songs like The War and even The Adventure, where there's a lot of like echoes and delays used and everything. And they were more solid in this album, in my opinion, than any other album they've released. Even the Love albums, which used a lot of like echo and delay for sure, but they did well on that. But I think they did even better on this for sure in terms of stitching the instrumentation together in a well done manner. And yeah, that's it for my review of all the Angels and Airwaves albums ranked from worst to best. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are and what your guys' list would be on favorite albums by Angels and Airwaves from worst to best or best to worst or whatever in the comments below. And I will see you guys in another video. Peace.